So for everybody, this is Seeb Levermann from Orden Ogan, and we are at the ProgPower Festival that you just played.
Yes.
So I guess we could start off with that, and maybe you could talk a little bit about coming back. This is your second time to play.
Yes.
And maybe you can talk about your first time versus your second visit to the festival.
The first time here was amazing. It was our first time in the US anyway, and we were welcomed with open arms. And it was a great show. Like, the audience was fantastic. Sold a lot of merch, and so it was totally out of the question if we come back, as when Glenn asked us to come back. And this time it was a little bit difficult because we had to rework our lineup a little bit because our guitar player Toby was unfortunately missing, and so Niels took over the guitar from bass, and I had to play Toby's guitar parts, although I'm actually just the singer now and play not guitar anymore. And our light guy Dave went from the light desk to bass, and so it was a little weird, but it worked somehow with a little bit of luck. And the audience was amazing. I think this time was even better than the last time, so it was totally worth the effort.
Well, thanks for coming, especially with all the difficulties. I kind of wonder if, since the first visit, I don't know if everybody was familiar with you that time around, and then having been familiar with you about 5 years ago, coming back, a lot more people were familiar with your catalog.
I had the impression, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, even had some cosplayers. We had some pirates, and somebody dressed up as Alistair Vale.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about Alistair Vale as your
basically, I think with the first real record, we count the history of Orden Ogan from 2008 on, basically. But the first real record was Vale in 2008, and there was a concept story behind this guy being an immortal guy who is cursed and has to roam the earth, and everything that he leaves somehow decays behind him or whatever. That was the idea in the beginning, and we actually wanted to continue with that. But it developed more and more just to be like just a mascot of the band, and because I think like also with like concept stories of records in general, they limit you too much. You know, I like to have lyrics on a lot of metaphors in the lyrics, and so you can basically write about something that is actually meaning something completely different. But when you're writing like real concept records, I think it's too limiting. For me, I don't like that. I have to be like a bit more free in what I do.
Okay. But every album seems to still kind of have a theme to it.
Yes,
like
a general theme.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you come up with what your next album is going to be as you go through your process?
It depends. I mean, for Gunman, it was really when we were writing the first song. I think it was Down Here or something. And the first chord progression that we did, it sounded a little bit like a Western theme. And then there was the second song coming up, it was Vampire in Ghost Town, that also sounded a little bit like Western, and we're like, okay, maybe it's some sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, and this will be our dark fantasy Wild West record or whatever. And so it is somehow they're like little influences from maybe around you, and you pick them up and like, okay, maybe we should go to that direction.
So it just kind of presents itself, and you go with what?
Sometimes, yes. Well, most of the times, actually, it does, yes.
Okay. So, speaking of Gunmen and Wild West, you played 70,000 Tons.
Yes.
And then you flew out to the Southwest of America to film your video.
Yes.
So, can you talk a little more about that, and how that came about, how you decided to film in the U.S.?
If you do a Wild West record, you have to record a video in Monument Valley. I mean, that was totally out of the question from the first second on. And we are lucky that a good friend of us, Austin, he's actually living in Salt Lake City. Super nice guy. He's always like helping me with my lyrics. I always send the lyrics to him to double check, and we were working on little pieces together from time to time, because I really don't want to have like super stupid or like wrong lyrics. And since I'm not a native speaker, I might need some help from time to time. And so yeah, he's a super nice guy, and he lives in Salt Lake City, and so I was like, okay, when we're on 70,000 tons anyway, we'll just fly over to Salt Lake City. And then we did a road trip from there to Monument Valley and stayed there for like 3 days.
Wow.
Did a horseback ride through the desert and stuff, and yeah. The funny thing is that you obviously can see that it's all totally shot in camera, and there are still people arguing and saying, oh, this is all CGI. It can't be possible that the German guys go to the US to shoot a video.
That was really cool. I'm glad you got to do that. So I guess one of the things we could talk about with your live shows, how do you prepare for your live shows? How do you warm up? How do you decide what your soloist is going to be?
I mean, actually, I would say not enough. We're not the band that is like rehearsing each week or whatever. So everyone is living like hundreds of kilometers away from each other.
Okay.
So we meet up like some days before a show.
Mm-hmm.
And the good thing is that they are all like super pro musicians and they prepare at home. And so if we meet up, everyone is like, it's just like little details that you have to talk through and check again or whatever. And according to live shows, I think most of the time, like, yeah, 99% of the time we have the set lists fixed when we're on stage. It happens that we like throw things around and just kick out a song or whatever, but most of the time we know exactly what we're going to do.
Okay, cool. How do you feel Orden Ogan has gotten their sound over the years? Power metal, has kind of its expected sound and things for the genre, but Orden Ogan kind of stands out with a slightly different sound, a different kind of style, especially something I think about is like a lot of the layered vocals, the choruses that are really, of course there's a hook to them, but there's a large choir sound and that kind of thing in the choruses. Can you talk a little bit more about how you've developed your style?
The thing is, I don't really consider Orden Ogan to be like a really power metal band. I personally don't really listen to power metal at all, actually.
Okay.
I like to listen to a lot of harder music, like especially well-produced hard music, like Testament, Exodus, Machine Head, whatever, stuff like that. I actually grew up listening to a lot of old school death metal, and when it comes to Orden Ogan, if you take away the vocals, or let me say like the vocals and the layered choir stuff, there's a lot of very hard riffing going on in there. I think this is one of the things that makes us different from a lot of the other power metal bands, especially the European ones, where it's just like very much, how can I say, it sounds like candy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think when you speak about the choirs and stuff like, I mean, it's normal for a lot of European or especially German power metal bands, but I think our influences are pretty much coming from a very different direction, because I think when I started the band or started being a musician, I think one of my biggest influences actually was Metallica. And when I listened to Injustice for All, for example, the Black End intro with this like layered guitars, and then the hard riffing afterwards, I said, this is exactly how a band should sound, like with a melodic intro and then the hard riff, but the thing I thought was that melodic intro should be picked up in the chorus again. So that was what I thought was missing, and I think this is a little bit what Orden Ogan is actually doing. And considering the layered vocals, I think my father used to listen to a lot of like 50s music, like the Hollies or whatever, the bands are on. They did a lot of vocal layering, and I think this is my main influence actually.
Cool, I didn't even know that, so that's good to hear about. I know you do producing for really like your main line of work around playing with Orden Ogan. Do you feel like any of your styles and influence have seeped into bands that you've produced?
It depends. I mean, there are a lot of bands where you have like the one main guy who exactly knows what he wants and just wanted to have a great sound. And then it's fine for me. Then they just send me the tracks and I just make the best out of it. Like, make it sound good, and I'm like, okay, let's try. And there are other bands. I mean, one prime example for that is Rhapsody of Fire. I mean, Alex exactly knows what he wants, and there's no arguing about it. You know, if he says, I need the violins louder, I make them louder, and it's fine. Another example is Brainstorm, for example. Then they said they're doing the same thing like for years, and they're basically just doing what they ever did. And they said, oh, maybe it would be great to have like an outside opinion, somebody who says, maybe let's try it like this and that. And so that was big fun working with them on the latest record, Midnight Ghost, because we just tried out a lot of stuff and like redid the songwriting. And yeah, I mean, obviously then there's a bit of me coming in there there as well. But what I said, it depends.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So it just depends on what they're looking for and how much influence and help that they want from you versus we know what we want, we just want you to do what we need and we go forward. So, all right. So, what's kind of on the horizon next for Orden Ogan?
I should have been songwriting this year, technically. I took some time off, which was good. Now we're back on track, like totally. Writing songs at the moment, so we're expecting to release a new record like sometime next year. Some when do you say that? You know what I mean? Like at some point in time, 2020. And I think it will be combined with the headlining tour.
Oh,
but that is still not confirmed yet, so this is the plan for now.
Okay. So what other kind of shows do you have going on for the rest of the year?
Oh, not much, because what I said, actually I should have been writing songs at the moment. So we didn't do so much. I think we played one show in the Czech Republic. We had a festival in Norway, now this. And two special events. The one thing was Orden Ogan's pirate cruise, which we did on a small boat in the area where we come from. And the other thing is the last gunman show, if you will, that we do in the saloon, where we also shot a few sequences of that video clip. And both shows were like, the pirate cruise was sold out in 25 hours. That was crazy. It was one post on Facebook and all the tickets were gone. And the other thing was also, I think like 700 tickets in 3 weeks, and we were sold out like 18 weeks before the show. So looks good at the moment.
Oh yeah, definitely. So kind of winding down performances, kind of getting into the recording process next, and then starting over again next year for your new album.
Yep.
Okay. I want to ask you a little bit about your stage clothes.
Yes.
I remember when you came to ProgPower the first time, they were crazy. You had a tire on your jacket. Do you make your own costumes, or do you have them?
No. Those were made by a friend of ours, Rainer Frenzen, who also is the director of I think the Fever, Things We Believe in, Gunman, video clips. Though I have to say, we, especially for Gunman, we did a lot of stuff together, and also like the whole concept and stuff. But he's actually directing and cutting the stuff. But he also made these clothes, and I mean for the stage clothes that we wear right now, that was easy.
Okay.
Because cowboy outfits and cowboy outfits.
Yeah, those are kind of easy to find naturally without having to come up. But it seemed like your clothes kind of match whatever album that you're presenting at the time, and then you change it as it goes on.
That's the plan.
Cool. So what has been your most memorable concert to play so far?
I would say after yesterday, this will be like one of those. There are some that have been really great. I mean, Wacken in 2016, I believe it was. That was amazing because we were the first band on that stage, and it was raining cats and dogs, and still the place was packed, like totally, and nobody left. That was crazy. That is like really fan dedication. Yeah. And that makes you feel like really proud of what you achieved with the audience and stuff. Yeah, I mean, in general, it's crazy what you get to see when you're on the road. I mean, we were the first time in Japan this year. That was great. 70,000 tons of metal was great. So I have never been on a cruise ship before.
Oh wow! Yeah. What was your experience being on the cruise?
It was I don't remember so much because it was like 4 days of partying. Yeah, but
a lot of music.
A lot of music.
Yeah.
And we lost our drummer Dirk like in one day, I think it was. Yeah, he was. We should actually technically have played a show at like 1 in the afternoon, and I think we did, but he was lost until 12:30 or so because he partied a bit too hard the night before. But he played like one of the best shows in his life, so it's okay.
Good muscle memory. Well, I'm glad you caught me. Did it put you in a little bit of a panic?
Yes. To be honest, yes. It was not a comfortable situation, but the thing is, you experience that once, and then you know, okay, you can rely on the people, and so
Yeah, because especially like with this time around, you had to do a lot of finagling to get things to work, and then it came out great. You know, so becoming masters of disasters, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
All right. I guess it's all the questions that I have right now. Or is there anything that you'd like to add or want to talk about, or anything you want like our fans to know about?
The only thing I always say at the end of interviews, if I'm asked to say something to the fans, is thank you.
Well, thank you so much for playing ProgPower again this year. It was really great to see you, and
Thanks
it was
for having
awesome to see the audience response to you this time. So we hope you'll come back. And
Anytime.
yeah, so hope to see you again soon. And thanks for interviewing with Lady Obscure Music Magazine.